again, and welcome, Stephanie and David. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to begin by having you both just introduce us to your companies and your approaches to quantum computing, briefly, if you can. Stephanie, start with you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much for attending and listening in on a quantum session. So my name is Stephanie Simmons, and I'm the founder and chief quantum officer of Photonic, Inc. We are a disruptive type of quantum. There's been a bunch of different approaches to quantum computing over the years, and we are a new one that works on distributed quantum computing, multi-core quantum processing to achieve limitless scale. So that is what we have accomplished. We've done distributed quantum computing and have been the only company to do that and are working to deliver that to value to customers.
Thank you. And David?
Yeah, Microsoft, the approach that we take for quantum is the same approach that we take for everything. So we're a platform company, and that's the DNA that we're applying to quantum. So we start with the hardware, with the foundation of everything, where we work with multiple hardware providers, including Photonic. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Stephanie. And including also our own hardware approach with the topological approach. On top of that, we have like the core quantum systems that are really unique for every modality. And we have in there also a good partnership with Photonic and other hardware providers. And then on top of that, we have like the independent platform, that the OS, the equivalent of the OS. And on top of that, we have applications and SDK and developer tools for really the goal is to provide an end-to-end full stack platform, but always opening up every layer so you have an ecosystem at every layer of that platform.
Thank you for that. Now let's take a step back and kind of set the scene for people because, you know, there's some folks in the audience who've probably been to a session or two on quantum computing before. It's been talked about for a long time. So tell me kind of what's different or new about the roadmap toward a practical quantum computer? Like what's changed in the last 2 or 3 years? And Stephanie, I'll let you start.
Yeah, it's been a phenomenal journey. It's been known for decades that quantum technologies offer exponential speed-ups once you unlock certain pieces. And what you've seen, when you've heard about in the media, is that people were trying to use earlier versions of quantum systems to see whether or not you could use them for commercial applications. It wasn't known. That was what we'll call noisy quantum. What's just unlocked, and one of the things that we've contributed to the field on, is this logical quantum computing, this reliable quantum computing. That only turned on in the past year or two. And so now we have that clear path towards delivering the known applications that deliver ROI, which is why Microsoft has been so excited and motivated for quantum, to develop quantum for so many decades. That promise is on the near-term horizon because of these innovations on the quantum stack.
When we say near-term, David, what does that mean to you now? Like how optimistic are you about the time horizon for a practical quantum computer, and what seems reasonable in your view at Microsoft?
Yeah, so that milestone of having reliable quantum is deeper than it sounds, right? Because it's really the foundation of then getting to the next big phase, right? Which is scalable quantum. So we were on shaky foundations to do that, right? Now that we are in a new era where we talk more, the conversation is more about reliable qubits and not physical qubits, right? So who cares how many physical qubits you have? The importance here is how many logical qubits you have, because that's the foundation where we can start talking about scalable quantum, which is the one that will be out there with a commercial value and with huge impact.
And to stick with you for a moment, to get to that scalability, what are some of the practical challenges that still need to be solved or worked through to achieve that?
Me too, yeah. So the core part of it, so a problem that is not like discussed a lot. We talk a lot about error correction, for example, right? And we say, hey, at the end of the day, you bring a lot of physical qubits, and that will create a reliable logical qubit. Perfect, that sounds great. The problem that we had till now is that the more noisy qubits that you added, the less reliable the resulting combination of it was. We call that being above the threshold or below the threshold. So the big change now is that we are below the threshold, and that is the fundamental problem that now we are starting to see an end to it. So now the conversation is how do you bring that together in a system that can scale? And that's where you also need to consider other aspects of the technology itself. That's why we think that having multiple modalities and having a platform that is bringing all of that together, that richness is what will really get us to that scalable phase.
Yeah, I know error correction is something that early systems really struggled with, but it does seem like there's been progress recently. Can you just describe what changed there and what the nature of that advance was?
Sure. So for the longest time, people were trying to find value in these noisy quantum systems because they assumed that to do error correction, you would need thousands, tens of thousands of physical qubits. And the best thing that people had put out was, maybe a dozen or even maybe up to 100 or so. So the gap was big. One of the things that our firm was able to contribute to the world was about a year and a half ago, we shared how to use an entirely new kind of quantum error correction code. We redefined the stack around what's called QLDPC codes. These are 5G codes that were made quantum. But that meant that suddenly, instead of having to hit 10,000 physical qubits, we can do so with 100 or 200. And there's been more innovation to bring that in yet further. So the whole world is open here. The whole stack is open, and lots of different innovations are happening top to bottom, but that's brought in the interest in commercial applications. Right now, there's a clear shot through scalability mechanisms, either through networking or other mechanisms, to hit the kinds of numbers needed to really affect the bottom line of many, many different firms. So when we're talking about timelines, this is like a small number of years, 2 to 3 to 4 years, rather than 10 or 20 because of stack innovations that are affecting many, many different teams. So we're kind of in the pre-ChatGPT moment for quantum, but we know it's kind of like 2028 or 2018, right? But we know it's coming, right? It's a couple years away, and it's going to hit like a tsunami.
I also want to ask about quantum proof encryption, because I know the National Institute of Standards and Technology released some quantum proof encryption algorithms a couple of years ago. I think it was in 2024. This was a big concern for a long time. So can we consider that a solved problem now? Or is there more work to be done on that front?
It's a great question because we tend to think about this problem as a technology problem. It is not a technology problem, at least not anymore. So as you said, there are already standards that can help us implement quantum safe algorithms that we can apply. What is really the problem here? The problem is more like an organizational problem. It's an implementation problem. It reminds me, I know that is so long time ago, but it reminds me a little bit to the 2000 effect, right? Where that was not a technology problem. It was a deep problem in every organization that basically has to update like every single system to make sure that it complies with that big challenge that we had, right? If you apply that same concept to this new, I mean, again, completely different scenario because it's much deeper. It's everywhere. Encryption is everywhere in an organization. So just the process of understanding what are your challenges, inventorying everything that you have, not only software, but even devices that you have in your organization that you will need to make sure that they are ready for that future, quantum safe future. That is a fundamental step that every organization, before you ask, every organization should start taking today. Because so 2000, I was right after college, first job, and I remember being on call in New Year's Eve, right? So I don't want to leave that again. Actually, in this case, it's even worse because they can go back in time and try to decrypt things that they can be capturing today. So the sooner, the better. And the way to approach it is not only thinking of a magical silver technical bullet that will solve all my problems. This will require a lot of processes, planning, organization, and strategy to make sure that you do it across the entire organization.
So it's not too early to start thinking about how to quantum proof your operations. It sounds like, even though I know companies have a lot of other things and shorter term concerns on their minds. Okay, well, I want to ask you just about like looking ahead. What would be the next kind of milestone that we all should look out for? We've talked about some things that have been worked through here, error correction to some degree, quantum proofing our encryption algorithms, but are there other big milestones in the quantum computing progress that we should keep an eye out for and that you think might be coming soon-ish?
So if you take it.
Well, then layer in when I
Perfect.
Through. So yes, it is going to be in a really exciting phase. What are the known applications that deliver performance that can't be achieved any other way with quantum? Those unlock at around 100 to 200 application-grade logical qubits. That's when we start understanding chemical processes like metabolism or catalysts or batteries or heavy element anything. We do not have tools that can simulate those quantum mechanical processes, and so everything to do with the energy transition, as well as just manufacturing chemicals, all of those things, we will suddenly have tools fit for purpose. A couple hundred logical qubits more than that, and we'll start talking about the cybersecurity impacts. That's part of that mix. And then a couple thousand past that is where we start to get into financial applications and optimization. So that's going to be kind of the known wave, but what we don't know is how the heuristics on top of quantum are going to really impact AI. So the math of quantum is the math of AI. These are matrices, and so the natural language for quantum can help with some of the AI workloads that we have. And what that interaction looks like is going to be figured out live in the next few years, right? Now, keep in mind, quantum systems require far less energy than AI systems. So there's pieces where we can leverage the best of HPC and AI and quantum and fit them together and get the most combinatorial benefit for all of these really advanced compute platforms. That's in the short term. And so when you talk about quantum ready, yeah, what are you going to do in your organization if suddenly you have on Microsoft or via any other provider access to that kind of compute power? What are you going to do to stay in front of the competition that may have a quantum plan in place?
Well, how should we think about that? Like for the average, large or small company or a scientific lab, perhaps, like how should they think about classical computing and quantum computing and artificial intelligence kind of fitting together in their kind of future repertoire of tools and different computing solutions?
Yeah. Well, the first thing to say is that it's not a replacement. So quantum computing is not going to replace CPUs or GPUs, just like GPUs didn't replace CPUs, right? It's a new compute paradigm for specific problems that will be complementary to the ecosystem. That said, I think one example that I use, because I think you mentioned it as one of the hero scenarios for quantum computing, will be scientific discovery. So in general, anything related to understanding science, from chemistry to materials to life sciences, that will be completely redefined with quantum computing. In Microsoft, we already have a platform. We call it Microsoft Discovery. It's a platform to help R&D organizations to do scientific discovery. And you realize that that platform is a combination of all these computing paradigms. And I think it's a great example of what the future will look like, because you have agentic AI that is the one doing all the heavy lifting on the reasoning. So going through for example, scientific literature, reasoning about that, coming up with hypotheses, then validating those hypotheses, and then learning from the results to start over. If you think about that, the validation of hypotheses is very tricky right now to do, right? Well, either with CPUs, so you're using HPC processes like complex HPC algorithms like DFTs for molecular simulation, or whether you're using AI, it's not accurate enough. So you start requiring like the physical world. You need to include into that loop the physical lab. So you have even efforts in there of doing automated lab, where you can bring the lab in the agentic loop. What is quantum here? So quantum will be dramatically revolutionary for that concept, because the AI models, the AI loop, will be able, without having to instantiate a physical lab, it will be able to get like lab accurate simulations of every hypothesis that it can come up with. So that means that you are in silico speed, you can suddenly explore a vast search space between AI, HPC, and quantum. That, for me, is the perfect example of what the future will look like.
Yeah, it's a powerful vision. Do either of you think there's any chance that quantum will soon be considered a nationally competitive technology, as GPUs have been?
Quantum is already named as one of the technological priorities for the US, for Canada, for the UK, for China. So these are really important technologies because of the transformative potential and how it can click into so many different verticals. It will become an interesting part of the equation. Yeah, from an economic perspective, it's going to be something that people are looking at. It's already something that people are looking at. So it's already one of the things that are in the Wassenaar Agreement for export controls, for example, and that's probably not going to stop. So the important point is to have good, strong relationships with like-minded allies and make sure we're all benefiting and not just doing a bunch of high, tiny gardens with big walls, right? Let's work together and get in front of it and make sure that we're all benefiting from it, because there's big upside for this kind of technology.
And Stephanie, I imagine as you're building your company and this future, you're competing on some level for talent and maybe for funding with AI companies and other tech companies that have shorter time horizons and returns, near-term promise of returns. So what has that been like for you?
Well, yeah, I'm happy to share that today we're announcing a $200 million US close for a raise, because it is the case that there is this recognition that humanity just needs more compute. We always seem to want more compute, and so AI is part of that journey, but it's been a generations-long journey, and quantum is the ultimate level of that compute, right? It is the most complete kind of information processing that are allowed by physical laws that we know of. So we know that commercializing this next branch of physics is not just going to be a small side note. It is going to be the next part of human history, just like commercializing semiconductors has given rise to things like AI.
Interesting. Well, final question for each of you. What will it mean for this advent of quantum computing to come within our lifetimes? What changes will this bring about? And David, start with you.
I like to think, and also connecting to the question of how important is this to every region in the planet, right? To nations, for example. If you look back at history, and there's a book that, I love that book. It's called, I think it's called Technology and the Rise of Powers, that does like an analysis on all the industrial revolutions, what was the defining factor on the winner for each of them, right? And you quickly realize, if you just do an analytical effort on it, that is the scale of it, right? So it's not so much the innovation, which is also super important, it will give you that head start, but it's more who's the first one who's able to scale. Now take that to quantum. If you think about quantum, about the applications of quantum on areas like energy, life sciences, materials, chemistry, agriculture, food, so you have sustainability, every single aspect by itself is an industrial revolution. Just think about that. So the way that I see quantum computing is more like a machine of industrial revolutions. That's how important it's going to be. It's something that will dramatically change society and industry for the good. It's not going to be like a quantum computing in your pocket, so you are not going to be able to see it directly, but it's going to transform every aspect of our lives.
And Stephanie, final word.
Well, I'd just like to add, when people started commercializing semiconductors, they were excited about hearing aids. They already had vacuum tubes making computers work, right? They had no idea what was going to come from commercializing semiconductor physics. So everything you said was true. And then there's the whole world of opportunity that we cannot yet see, because we are not the generation that will see it. We're going to take these tools and going to make them real. They're going to make them normal for everybody. So quantum won't be the same thing as magic. It'll be a normal feature that we get to use, a tool we get to use to unlock all kinds of opportunities.
Compelling vision. We'll leave you with that. Thank you so much, Stephanie and David. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we introduce the next talk, I didn't think that was a very exciting cheer for Stephanie. Stephanie, come back in front, please, with me. So Stephanie and Photonic is from Vancouver. They just announced today, she said it, she very modestly said it, they raised $200 million. They're a $2 billion company out of Vancouver. Please, let's give her a round of applause. I think she deserves a little bit more than that. I know the founders are very, very modest about that, but I think that's a great thing. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You're definitely going to be a big spotlight for next year. We're excited to see what Photonic is doing out of Vancouver.
Oh yeah, made in Canada. Let's make it happen
That's
here.
great. Awesome. Okay, awesome. A round of applause. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.